The engine hadn't even cooled yet when I saw the red glow reflecting off my parents' front porch. A brand new Audi convertible, still with paper plates, parked proudly in our family's cracked driveway like it didn't know it didn't belong. I didn't have to ask whose it was. I already knew. Brielle twirled next to it, her white sundress catching the golden light like she was in a commercial. "Isn't she gorgeous?" she said, running her freshly manicured fingers across the hood. The salesman basically gave it to me, like fate or something. I stepped out of my car, a 10-year-old Toyota with a coffee stain on the seat and 148,000 miles on the dash. My work badge was still clipped to my blouse. My heels ached from standing 12 hours straight auditing risk portfolios, and my phone buzzed again. Another overdraft warning. "Brielle," I said, trying not to sound like I was unraveling. "Where did you get the money?" She flipped her hair, the same golden curls Mom used to say made her look like an angel. "Don't start, Aubrey. Mom and Dad helped me. Right, guys?" Behind her, my parents stood on the porch with 2 flutes of champagne. Champagne, like this was something to celebrate. Mom gave me that familiar look, the one that always meant, "Not here, not now, don't embarrass us." Sweetheart, she needed a safe car. You know how dangerous the roads are these days. I blinked. "You used the emergency fund." "It's just a car," Brielle said, rolling her eyes. "You're good with money. You'll make it back. And besides, family comes first." I pulled out my phone and held up the screen. "There's $116 left in that account. You didn't even ask." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Aubrey, your sister has interviews lined up. She needs to make a good impression." "What interviews?" I laughed, bitter and hollow. The ones after the 3 jobs she quit this year? Or the colleges she never finished? Right on cue, Brielle's eyes welled with tears. "She's being mean to me again, Mom." Mom rushed to her side, like Brielle was the one who just had her future stolen. "Aubrey," she whispered like we were in church, "you've always been the strong one." That line, that goddamn line. They said it when I paid the electric bill in college, so the house wouldn't go dark. They said it when I worked 2 jobs while Brielle figured herself out. They said it when Dad retired at 56 and forgot to tell anyone he drained his 401k. "You're right," I said softly. "I am the strong one." Mom smiled like that settled it, like I was back in my box. Predictable, reliable Aubrey. I turned away and dialed the bank. "Hi, this is Aubrey Callahan. I'd like to freeze all activity on account 4,487. Yes, immediately. And close the joint account with Margot Callahan as well." Mom's face dropped. "What are you doing?" "Protecting what's left of my life," I said. "You can't do this," she snapped, reaching for my phone. "I already did." I turned to Brielle, who looked like I'd just kicked her new car. "Enjoy it while you can," I said, "because when the loan bounces, they're going to come looking for the cosigner." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. The silence was delicious. I walked back to my car, my heartbeat thudding like a war drum. Behind me, Dad called my name. Mom yelled something about betrayal. Brielle shrieked, but I kept walking. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse on the steering wheel like some soap opera heroine. I smiled, because for the first time in a very, very long time, I wasn't the strong one anymore. I was the dangerous one. I didn't drive home. I drove straight to Logan's. His porch light was still on when I pulled into the gravel driveway. The familiar creak of the wooden step felt like stepping into an older version of myself. The version that used to believe in family, forgiveness, and fixing everything quietly. That girl was dead now. He opened the door before I knocked. "Hey," he said. "You okay?" I held up my phone, still glowing from the last transaction. "You still have that forensic accounting software?" He stepped aside, booted it up an hour ago. Figured you might call. We didn't hug. We didn't talk about what happened last time we saw each other. We just sat side by side at his dining table while the laptop screen reflected off his glasses. "Start with this one," I said, forwarding him the account numbers I'd collected over the years. Joint savings, emergency funds, the mom's card I'd kept paying off because they swore it was only for groceries. Logan's fingers flew across the keyboard. "Okay. Whoa. Okay. What?" He spun the screen toward me. A list of microtransactions popped up like a slow drip. $138 to a private tutoring service. $212 to a resort in Florida. $59 to some obscure payment processor. All from the emergency fund. I asked. He shook his head. "From your own linked checking account. They've been siphoning small amounts for years. Nothing big enough to trigger alerts, but consistent, like someone who knew exactly how to stay under radar." I swallowed hard. "And this," he clicked another tab, "that car Brielle's flaunting. You're listed as the co-signer." "I never signed anything." "You didn't need to. They used your signature from that student loan in 2008. Digitally scanned. Sloppy job, too." My chest tightened. "How much total?" I asked. He leaned back, arms crossed. Between the fake loans, the forged cosigns, the skimmed withdrawals, we're sitting around $280,000. My hand started shaking. Not from fear. From fury. "This is theft," I said. "This is federal fraud," Logan corrected. He clicked one more button. "And this is the cherry on top." I leaned in. "They refinanced their house last month. Used your name as a secondary guarantor." "What?" "Forged. Again." I sat back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. "They used me for everything. My name, my money, my silence. And I let them. Until now." I stood up. "I'm going to the police." Logan didn't try to stop me. "I'll get the files ready." Asheville's Financial Crimes Unit sat in a quiet building behind the courthouse, a place most people didn't even realize existed. Detective Erin Sloan met me with a calm nod and eyes that had clearly seen too many broken families. "This is a lot," she said, flipping through the folders. "You're saying this has been happening for years." I nodded, but I didn't connect the dots until tonight. "Your parents and sister, did they have access to your accounts willingly?" "Some. The rest they took without permission." She studied one forged signature closely. "This is serious fraud. Identity theft, financial abuse, cosigner manipulation. If we move forward with charges, there's no turning back." "I'm not turning back." She didn't smile, but she looked satisfied. "Then let's get started." I handed her the folder with my real signature, documents comparing years of transactions, and a printed log from Logan's system. Each piece of paper was another betrayal, but also another weapon. They thought I'd never fight back. They forgot I worked in risk management. By the time I walked out of the station, it was nearly midnight. My phone had 42 missed calls and 17 voicemails. The last message read, "You're tearing this family apart. Brielle's crying nonstop. What happened to you?" I deleted it. Then I texted Logan, "Step 2 starts tomorrow." The next morning, I returned to the house, not to talk, not to explain, but to let them look me in the eye while the floor fell out from under them. Brielle answered the door in a silk robe, coffee in hand, like a suburban goddess. Her smile froze when she saw me. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm not here to fight," I said. "Just wanted to let you all know. I closed everything. All accounts. All lines of credit. The emergency fund. The joint accounts. The ones you drained." She blinked. "You're being dramatic." Dad appeared behind her, still in pajama pants, phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. "Aubrey, listen. There's been a misunderstanding. Mom came last, makeup half done, as if preparing for another performance. We never meant to hurt you," she said quickly. It was just temporary help. You've always said families should support each other. I said that while supporting everyone but myself. I stepped inside. They didn't stop me. Do you know what happens when co-signers are removed from fraudulent loans? I asked, pulling out a printed form. The bank investigates. If they find forgery, they prosecute. If they find stolen identity, they escalate. Guess what they're doing now? Dad paled. You wouldn't. I already did. Brielle's voice rose. You're ruining my life. Im reclaiming mine. Mom reached for my hand. We're your parents. We raised you. I pulled away. You raised a provider, not a daughter. Brielle laughed bitterly. You've always hated that they love me more. No, I said calmly. I hated that you thought love meant never facing consequences. Outside, Logan waited in the car, papers spread across the dashboard. He was assembling the final report for the prosecutor. Inside, I dropped the last printed file onto their coffee table. A log of every withdrawal, every forged document, every abuse of trust spanning 8 years. Keep it, I said. You'll need it when the detectives show up. You're bluffing, Mom whispered. Am I? I walked out, closing the door behind me. The silence didn't feel empty this time. It felt earned. Back at Logan's, we printed copies, scanned everything, and uploaded the files to a secure cloud folder labeled Operation Full. By noon, I was sitting across from Detective Sloan again. This is more than enough, she said, flipping through the forged loan applications. You're listed as a guarantor on their home refinance. That's state-level fraud. And these signatures, this is textbook identity theft. She leaned back in her chair. We'll need official charges filed with the DA. I'll handle that. But you'll need to prepare for blowback. Families like this don't go down quietly. I'm ready. Just as I stood to leave, my phone rang. Justin, my boss. Hey, sorry to call during the day, he said, but your sister applied for a job here and used you as a reference. I closed my eyes. Did she lie on the application? She claimed a finance degree and 4 years' experience at a firm you supposedly worked with. I laughed dry and sharp. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester. That's what I figured, but I needed confirmation. She's also applied to 3 competitor firms, all with you listed as her supervisor. Report it, I said. Everywhere. I already did. After the call, I slumped onto Logan's couch, my brain spinning. I had walked away from my family financially, but now they were unraveling legally, professionally, socially. And still, they kept reaching, grabbing, pulling, like drowning people who would rather drag me down than learn to swim. That evening, Helen arrived with a bottle of wine and news from the courthouse. They're trying to refinance again, she said, dropping new papers on the table. Using your name. Again. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I picked up my phone. It's time, I told Detective Sloan. File everything. 3 days after the charges were filed, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment at the edge of downtown Asheville. It was small, old, and the kitchen tiles made a weird, squeaking sound, but it was mine. No names on the lease, but mine. No shared mailbox. No keys handed to anyone else. Logan helped carry the boxes. Helen brought me a plant. It already looked better than anything I'd grown up with. You really doing this? Helen asked as we unpacked. Cutting them off for good. I nodded. They don't get to come back this time. Not after this. Outside, the sky was pale blue and silent, but my phone kept buzzing. Mom had called 8 times this morning. Brielle had texted me a picture of Dad in a hospital bed with the caption, his blood pressure spiked. Are you happy now? Helen read over my shoulder. Don't respond. But what if he's really? No. Logan cut in from the kitchen. That's what they want. You to doubt. You to fold. Every time. I sat at the table, staring at my laptop. Bills. Legal notices. email threads from Detective Sloan. My entire life had become a courtroom file. Then came the knock. Helen opened the door to find Detective Sloan holding a sealed envelope. "They're being served," she said. "Bank has frozen the accounts. Foreclosure proceedings have started. They're losing the house." I swallowed. The same house they told me would never be mine because Brielle needed a place to raise kids someday. That house. She nodded. Helen handed me a glass of wine. "To poetic justice," she said, raising her glass. The next morning, I got another call from Justin. "The board saw how you handled everything," he said. "They were impressed. We're offering you a promotion. Senior risk analyst." I blinked. "What?" "You caught a major fraud case, handled it calmly, protected your assets. If you did this with your own family, we trust you'll do it for the company." I hung up and just sat in the quiet. My life, slowly, painfully, was rebuilding itself. But the messages kept coming. "Mom, your father has nowhere to go when we lose the house." "Brielle, if Dad dies, it's on you." "Aunt Lydia, you can't jail your own parents. What happened to you?" Logan finally grabbed my phone and muted the entire contact list. "They're falling apart," he said. "And instead of taking responsibility, they're trying to pin it all on you." I stared at the wall for a long time. They spent their whole lives making me the responsible one. And now? Helen asked gently, "Now I'm the free one." That evening, we stood on my tiny balcony watching the sun bleed over the Blue Ridge Mountains. Helen scrolled Zillow listings on her tablet. "There's a place I want to show you. Bigger, brighter, and this time we'll put it in your name first." I laughed for the first time in days. The old me would have hesitated, worried about being too selfish, too fast, too cold. But the woman I was becoming? She smiled and said, "Show me." The courtroom smelled like dust and old air conditioning. It was colder than I expected, brighter too. The kind of sterile, unfeeling light that left nowhere to hide. They brought my parents in first. Margot in a gray blazer, clutching a tissue she didn't use. Raymond in a suit that didn't quite fit anymore. He looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just seeing clearly for the first time. Brielle sat behind them in the gallery, arms folded, lip trembling, but not from guilt, just rage. "Court is now in session," the bailiff said. The judge looked over his glasses. "We are here for the sentencing of Margot and Raymond Callahan, both charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial abuse. The defendants have requested to enter a guilty plea." Brielle gasped. "What?" Margot turned around and gave her daughter a look that almost made me feel something, until I remembered every forged signature, every withdrawal, every lie they told me to my face. "Very well," the judge said. "Before sentencing, we will hear the victim's statement. Ms. Callahan." My heels clicked against the marble floor. The letter in my hands shook just enough to betray that yes, I was still human. But my voice was steel. "Your Honor," I began, "what was taken from me isn't just financial. It's years of peace, trust, self-worth. They used my name like a credit card they never intended to pay off. My future became their emergency fund." Behind me, I could hear someone sniffle, but I didn't stop. They told me family meant sacrifice. They told me love meant giving without asking. And every time I asked for something back, they reminded me I was the strong one, the reliable one, the responsible one. I turned to look at them, but now I'm done. Margot whispered, "Aubrey, please, we're still your parents." "No," I said calmly. "You're just people who happen to raise me. You're not my family. Families don't steal from each other." The judge cleared his throat. "Thank you, Ms. Callahan." He shuffled some papers. Given the scale and duration of the crimes and the defendant's voluntary guilty plea, the court sentences both Margot and Raymond Callahan to 6 years in state prison, with eligibility for parole after 3. Restitution of $280,000 is required in full. Margot started to cry, finally. Raymond didn't look at me. He just stared at the floor. And as for Brielle Callahan, the judge continued, glancing down, you will stand trial separately next week for identity theft, employment fraud, and falsification of education records. No, Brielle shrieked. This is her fault. She's destroying our family. I didn't move. I'm just letting gravity do its job. Outside the courtroom, the sun was glaring. Reporters lined the steps. Someone shoved a mic in my face. How does it feel to send your parents to prison? I looked straight at the camera. They sent themselves. I just stopped covering for them. Then I turned and walked down those courthouse steps, not once looking back. Not even when Brielle screamed, "You're dead to me." Funny, I'd never felt more alive. The key clicked in the door of my new home like the final line in a symphony. It was small, sunlit, and quiet. The hardwood floors still smelled like varnish. The kitchen counters gleamed. No one had ever stolen from me here. No one ever would. Logan carried in the last box and dropped it on the counter. You sure you want to do this on your own? I nodded. For once, I want to hear my own thoughts echo off my own walls. He smiled but didn't push. Helen arrived 5 minutes later with champagne, a plant I couldn't name, and a gift bag full of dish towels that said things like, "No drama, just dinner." "This place," she said, spinning slowly in the foyer, "is peace." We toasted in the kitchen. The light through the window landed on my face like a blessing. That's when the doorbell rang. Detective Sloan stood outside, a manila folder in hand. "Sorry to interrupt moving day," she said, "but I thought you'd want to see this." She handed me the folder. Inside was the court's final notice. My parents' appeal had been denied. "They tried to claim you gave permission for everything," she said with a dry smile. "Didn't hold up." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was finally over. Almost. 2 days later, I received an email from their lawyer. "Your parents are willing to take a plea deal if you agree to write a letter asking for a lighter sentence." I didn't even hesitate. I sat down at my new kitchen table, pulled out my laptop and typed, "Dear Judge Hamilton, I will not be writing any letter in support of my parents. What they did wasn't a mistake. It was a series of deliberate choices made over years. Choices to steal, to lie, to manipulate. The only thing they regret is getting caught. I will, however, be submitting a victim statement detailing every forged document, every stolen dollar, and every way they tried to ruin my name when I finally said no. They chose this path. I choose to live without them. Aubrey Callahan," I hit send. And just like that, the guilt that had followed me like a ghost was gone. Later that evening, Helen and Logan helped me hang art on the bare walls. Simple things. A print of the Blue Ridge Mountains. A framed quote that said, "No is a complete sentence." That's when Logan's phone buzzed. "Local news just posted the update," he said, turning the screen toward me. "Brielle sentenced to 4 years. Identity theft. Employment fraud. Loan application tampering." Helen raised her glass again. "To karma." I smiled. "To silence." Then a final text. Unknown number. I didn't need to open it to know who it was, but I did anyway. "We have nowhere to go when we get out. Please, one more chance." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, "You had 31 years of chances. I only just got one. I'm keeping it." Then I blocked the number. Outside, the sky over Asheville turned the color of clean slate. Pale blue and wide open. Logan tapped his glass against mine, ready to start over. I looked around at the walls I'd chosen, the life I was building, the people who stayed, not because they needed something, but because they cared. "More than ready," I said.